You ghetto nurses need to know your place." The words cut through the emergency room like a scalpel. And then came the slap. A sharp, humiliating crack that silenced everything. Nurse Imani Carter, 32, dark brown skin, eyes burning with shock, staggered half a step back. Her cheek stung. Her shoulder hit the metal tray behind her, and the crash of syringes rolling across the floor echoed louder than anyone's conscience. For a heartbeat, the entire ER froze. Doctors, interns, patients, everyone stared. Dr. Ethan Blake, mid-40s, white coat pristine, stood there with his hands still raised. His jaw trembled, not with regret, but rage. "Now do your job," he spat. Imani didn't reply. She just straightened her back slowly, adjusted her scrubs, and picked up a fallen gauze pack from the floor. Her hands didn't shake. Her silence hurt more than a scream could have. A patient's wife gasped softly near the corner, whispering, "Did he just hit her?" No one moved. Not the interns. Not the other nurses. Fear had filled the room thicker than disinfectant. Imani pressed the gauze to her cheek and finally met his eyes. Her voice came out steady, low, cutting through the air with precision. "You'll regret that, doctor. Maybe not today, but you will." She turned and walked out, leaving the ER frozen in shame. The tension she left behind was unbearable. But inside her chest, the fire had already begun. Because this wasn't just another insult. This was war, and she had receipts. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now. Because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. The automatic doors hissed shut behind her as Imani Carter stepped out of the ER. The fluorescent hum faded, replaced by the steady thud of her heartbeat. She walked down the long, cold corridor, her cheeks still burning, but her steps calm, deliberate. The staff locker room was empty, just the sound of her sneakers on the tile floor and the faint buzz of an old ceiling light. She opened her locker, took a deep breath, and stared at her reflection in the small, dented mirror. A red mark still crossed her face, but her eyes were dry. Not broken, calculating. From behind her spare scrubs, she pulled out a worn black leather folder. Inside, printed emails, timestamps, signed complaints. 5 years worth. All ignored. Unprofessional tone. No evidence of racial intent. Matter resolved internally. Every denial was a scar. She sat on the bench, flipping through pages that smelled faintly of old ink and hopelessness. But tonight, the paper didn't feel heavy. It felt like ammunition. Her phone buzzed. A message from Eli Morales, the young intern who'd been beside her when it happened. I backed up the footage. Safe on my drive. A slow smile touched her lips. "Good," she whispered. "Then it starts tonight." Imani slipped the folder into her tote bag, zipped it shut, and reached for her grandmother's gold watch, the one she always wore before big decisions. She fastened it around her wrist, her reflection catching the faint glint of light. Her phone buzzed again this time. An email. Subject: Emergency board meeting. Attendance required. From Director Carter. Her expression hardened. She hadn't heard that name out loud in months. Carter. Her last name. Her father's name. No one here knew she was a hospital director's daughter. And that was exactly how she'd wanted it. Until now. She stood, tied her hair back, and whispered to the mirror. Steady low, like a promise. They wanted silence, they just gave a voice. 15 minutes later, the boardroom lights glared as bright as the ER. The long mahogany table shimmered beneath the cold fluorescent ceiling. Imani stood near the door, hands folded, her cheeks still red, her tote bag resting by her feet. Across from her sat Dr. Ethan Blake, the man who'd hit her, pretending calm, shirt pressed, tie perfect, eyes cold. Beside him, Chairman Roland Greaves, gray-haired and practiced in neutrality, cleared his throat. "Miss Carter," he began, voice smooth. "You were called here because Dr. Blake filed a report against you for insubordination during patient care." The words tasted like poison. Imani didn't move. Ethan leaned back smugly. She disrupted a trauma response. "Question my authority in front of staff. It could have cost a life." A few board members nodded, already convinced. Imani finally looked up, calm, her voice even. "And what about the part where you assaulted me, doctor?" The room stiffened. Ethan laughed, a short, dry sound. "I bumped her. Nothing more. She's exaggerating. The stress, you know how these things." A click interrupted him. Imani slid a small USB drive across the table. "Play that." Greaves frowned. "What is this?" "Footage," she said softly, "from the ER security feed, and one from a witness." Greaves hesitated, then nodded to the IT aide. The monitor flickered. The scene played. The slap, the gasp, the silence. No narration could match the weight of that sound. When the clip ended, the room stayed frozen. The only thing moving was a pulse in Ethan's jaw. Imani spoke first, her tone unwavering. "That's what bumped looks like, sir. And that's how a life almost got lost while he argued with his ego." A woman at the far end, Dr. Elaine Morris, folded her arms. "I was in that ER. She's right. If she hadn't spoken, that patient wouldn't have made it." Ethan's smirk faltered. Greaves exhaled slowly. "Blake, your refrain from clinical duties pending review." Imani didn't flinch. She simply reached into her bag, placed her worn folder on the table, and said quietly, "That's not the only report you'll want to see." Dozens of stamped complaints spread before them like a confession. Years of silence, now screaming. She looked at the stunned faces and said the words that hung like thunder. "This wasn't the first time. It's just the first time you all looked up. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe." The silence in the boardroom felt heavier than the slap itself. Every face turned toward Imani Carter, the folder of ignored complaints lying open like a wound that refused to close. Dr. Ethan Blake looked smaller now, not by height, but by truth. His arrogance drained away under the harsh fluorescent light that had once given him power. Chairman Greaves rubbed his temples. "Miss Carter, are you implying this is part of a larger pattern?" Imani didn't blink. "I'm not implying it, sir. I'm proving it." She tapped one of the documents, signed, dated, witnessed, from 3 years ago. The same doctor, the same language, the same outcome, no action taken. "Every time I spoke up," she said, "it disappeared. Until tonight." Across the table, Dr. Elaine Morris leaned forward. "And what do you want from this board, Miss Carter?" Imani's voice steadied. "Change. Real policy. Cameras in high-risk zones. Accountability for staff. Diversity panels that actually have power. I'm not here for pity. I'm here for reform." The words sliced through the room like glass. A low voice rose from the end of the table. Director Charles Carter. Her father, his tone careful, neutral, the kind of restraint learned after years in corporate silence. "Miss Carter," he said slowly, "are you aware that your proposal exposed the hospital to legal scrutiny?" Imani met his eyes, the first time she'd done it in months. "Then let it. If truth brings consequences, maybe it's time this place faced them." The other board members exchanged uncertain glances. Ethan tried to recover, his voice rising. "This is emotional manipulation. She's not thinking straight." Imani turned to him, her calm terrifying. "I'm thinking clearer than ever. You hit me because I made you feel small. And now you'll watch as every person you look down on finally stands tall." Her words landed like a gavel. Greaves leaned back, whispering to the secretary beside him. Papers shuffled. The tone in the room shifted, fear replacing denial. Charles Carter finally exhaled. "Miss Carter, Imani, your reforms will be reviewed immediately. Dr. Blake, you are suspended pending investigation." Ethan's face flushed red. Imani gathered her folder quietly, sliding each document back into place. Before leaving, she looked around the room one last time. "This isn't revenge," she said softly. "It's correction." And as she walked out, even the sound of her footsteps felt like justice taking shape. By morning, the hospital had changed, not in policy, but in temperature. Whispers followed Imani Carter down every corridor. Some were admiring, Others were venomous. She could feel eyes on her back, not from patience, but from power. In the break room, Eli Morales sat across from her, nervously tapping his coffee cup. "The board's decision went public," he said. "They suspended Dr. Blake last night." Imani didn't look up from the file she was reading. "Good, but he won't stay quiet." He hesitated. "You're right. He's already talking to lawyers." She closed the folder slowly, meeting his eyes. "Then we stay louder." Her phone vibrated again. Another anonymous message. "You don't belong here. You should have stayed silent." She took a deep breath, showing no reaction, and slid the phone aside. "They're scared," she said. "That means it's working." Across the hospital, a different kind of conversation was happening, behind glass doors and in private lounges. Senior doctors whispering about protocols, damage control, optics. Racism was no longer hidden. It was defensive. Later that afternoon, Dr. Elaine Morris found her in the administrative wing. "You're making enemies in high places," she said softly. Imani half smiled. "Then I'm standing in the right spot." Elaine glanced around before lowering her voice. "Watch your step. People like Blake always have allies, especially one DR. Roland Michaels. He runs the surgical division now. He's the kind who smiles while burying you in paperwork." Imani's expression hardened. "Then I'll start reading everything he signs." That evening, she sat in her small office, the city lights blinking beyond the window. Her grandmother's gold watch ticked softly against the desk, a reminder that time itself could be an act of defiance. She drafted an email to the board. Subject: Phase 1, Institutional Accountability Proposal. Cameras, anonymous reporting, cultural training, transparency in HR investigations. When she hit send, the system replied with a cold auto message. "Your request will be reviewed within 60 business days." She leaned back, whispering to herself, 60 days to decide whether fairness matters. That's 60 too many. Her phone buzzed one more time. A new number. "We know who you really are. Director's daughter." Imani stared at the screen, unbothered. Then they finally know who they're up against. The sun had barely risen when the email hit every department inbox. Effective immediately, Dr. Ethan Blake is terminated from North Lake Memorial Hospital. In the ER, whispers turned into stunned silence. No one had ever seen a doctor fall that fast. But Imani Carter didn't celebrate. She just watched the nurses exchange quiet looks. Some relieved, some afraid, and said softly, "Now we fix what let him survive this long." Her phone buzzed again, this time from Dr. Elaine Morris. The board voted. Your reform plan, cameras, reporting system, bias training, it passed. Imani blinked slowly. All of it. Every line. She closed her eyes, exhaling for the first time in days. The noise, the threats, the looks, it all folded into that single breath of victory. But not everyone was happy. In the upper office wing, Dr. Roland Michaels stared at his monitor, jaw tight. The reforms would cut his control in half. "She thinks she's a hero," he muttered to a colleague. She just opened Pandora's box. Downstairs, Imani walked the same hallway where she'd been slapped. The floor was spotless now, the tray replaced, but the memory stayed. Each step echoed with the rhythm of justice, slow, steady, undeniable. Eli Morales caught up beside her, phone in hand. "You're trending again," he said with a nervous laugh. Justice for Imani hit 500,000 views overnight. Imani smiled faintly. "Good. Let the world see what silence costs." They passed the patient from that night, recovering, smiling weakly as Imani waved. The man's daughter called out, "You saved him. Don't let them take that from you." Imani paused, nodded, and whispered, "I won't, ever again." Later, in her office, a small envelope waited on her desk. No name, just her own written neatly across it. Inside, a note, "You are the reason we stayed. Keep going." She held it for a moment, the paper trembling slightly between her fingers. Then she pinned it beside her grandmother's watch on the board behind her desk. Side by side, courage and time. Outside the window, morning light spilled across the hospital's white facade. The same walls that had once buried truth now gleaming brighter than they ever had before. Justice hadn't come quickly, but it had come completely. The hospital was quiet again. Morning light stretched across the corridor floors, pale and clean, washing away the chaos of the past nights. Imani Carter walked slowly toward the administrative office, no longer avoiding the stares that once followed her. Now, people looked with something new in their eyes. Respect. She entered the director's suite, the same space where decisions have been made to ignore her for years. Her father, Charles Carter, stood near the window, sunlight outlining his gray suit. He didn't speak at first, just watched her sign the final papers. Dr. Blake's termination confirmed, she said quietly. He nodded. And your reforms officially implemented as of this morning. For a brief moment, silence felt like peace, not fear. Charles stepped closer, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. You did what I couldn't. Imani smiled faintly. You gave me the seat. I just chose to stand in it. They shared a look, not of power, but of understanding. The cycle had finally broken. She gathered her folder, the one she had carried since that first ignored complaint. Now it was almost empty, every document replaced by change. When she turned to leave, her father said one last thing. Make sure they never forget how it started. Down the hallway, she passed the ER doors once more. Inside, nurses worked, voices calm, steady, confident. A young trainee she'd never met before looked up and whispered, Thank you, Miss Carter. Imani just smiled and kept walking. Outside, the city waited, horns, footsteps, morning bustle. She lifted her face to the cold air, the gold watch on her wrist glinting beneath the sun. For the first time in years, it didn't tick like a countdown. It ticked like freedom. She whispered under her breath, not as a promise, but as a reminder. They tried to silence one voice, now they'll hear 1,000. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.